Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to people in other time zones, those of you in Europe and on other continents. Welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit. I'm Steve Farrell with Humanities Team, and I'm one of your hosts during the summit. Today is day 2 of the Living in Oneness Summit. We are broadcasting live each day with at least 2 programs, and 2-hour-long programs, and we're talking about how we can become fully alive as part of the divine. I want to invite you to get comfortable and relax. We have a terrific program today. I think you are really going to enjoy this program and the one just after this one from 10 to 11 Pacific Time with Dr. Deborah Rosman, the President and Co-CEO of HeartMath. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our special guest for the hour. If you were listening, you heard me share. He is a wealth of knowledge, and also, I'm not sure Bill would say this about himself, but I want to say it about him. I think he's a model for living in oneness. I've had the pleasure to get to know him. He lives here in Boulder, Colorado, and you are so going to enjoy him. William Ury co-founded Harvard's program on negotiation and is currently a distinguished senior fellow on the Harvard Negotiation Project. He is the co-author with Roger Fisher of Getting to Yes, a 10 million copy bestseller translated into over 35 languages, and the author of the award-winning Getting Past No, The Power of a Positive No, and The Third Side. He is the author of the forthcoming Getting to Yes with Yourself. He is also the founder of the Abraham Path Initiative that has charted the path that Abraham and his family walked over 4,000 years ago. And welcome to the program, Bill. It's great to have you with us.
Oh, it's a real pleasure, Steve.
And as I was sharing, if you heard us chit-chatting here as we were getting going, we have so much ground to cover that we're just going to jump right into it. Let's start with negotiation, because if you all read the New York Times, you'll see that Bill is one of the key leaders in negotiation worldwide and is often called on by respected media, such as the New York Times, to give advice when sticky situations arrive, such as these impasses that have happened between President Obama and House Republicans in Congress here in the United States. He's also consulted by sovereign governments when sticky situations come up. We'll talk about some of those things. I thought we could begin with just this special gift, talent that you have in this area of negotiation, and then we can kind of step into oneness, because as you've shared with me, it's all kind of related. How did you come to be such an incredible leader in negotiation worldwide, Bill?
Well, I don't know exactly how I did. I know that when I was a child, I had the occasion to go to school in Switzerland when I was a child, in a school with children from many different cultures, maybe 30 or 40 different nationalities and cultures. And anyway, I've always had that question of how can we human beings get along with each other and deal with our differences and really appreciate our differences, but also be able to reach agreements. And so I became an anthropologist, actually, to study that question. But I always wanted to apply anthropology to something concrete, which is this question of how do we find better ways to deal with our differences than feuding with each other or killing each other. And so that's my passion, really. My passion is helping people get to yes.
Yes, and some of these, with Colombia, there are several countries that you're involved with. Syria, right?
Right.
I think maybe Colombia, that where these incredibly challenging situations surface, sovereign governments are actually reaching out to you to get your thoughts about how negotiation can come in. I know you've created even a special gift item, a bonus item for us that talks about negotiation. And maybe we can also, at this point, bring in the application of oneness. You haven't said this yourself, but just talking to you, the thing that occurs to me is it seems like negotiation is such an incredible application of oneness, a real tangible example of what oneness is. Am I onto something?
You're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, in the broad sense of the term, we're negotiating all the time. Negotiation is simply a fancy word for back and forth communication. You're trying to reach agreement with the other side, and you have some interests which maybe are in tension, like you'd like to a little more money and they would like to give you a little less, or you want to go someplace for the family vacation, someone else in the family wants to go somewhere else, and you're trying to reach agreement. In that sense, we're we're negotiating with our kids, with our partners, our spouses, we go to the office with our colleagues, our clients, our bosses, our employees. When I ask people how much time they negotiate, in the broad sense of the term, people often say, it's 50% of my time or more. So in that broad sense, what are we doing? As you say, Steve, we're trying to take differences and come into a single agreement. So it's a practical way of getting to yes is getting to one. We're trying to take disharmony and turn it into harmony. We're trying to move into alignment, into agreement, into working relationships that work for people. We're trying to take war and turn it into peace. So it's all about going to oneness.
And you've said, as we've talked before, you've said the best way to get to yes is to come from this place. What that intuitively strikes me as true, and it also seems a little mysterious. Can you?
Yeah, let me just say a word about that. The interesting thing is, I started off, working on how to help people get to yes in a very practical way. How do you reach agreement? And what I've found is, is that it's not always easy for people to get to yes. And, people say, well, yeah, it's easy to get to yes with some people, but not with others. There are these difficult people. So, after working on getting to yes, I wrote a book called Getting Past No about, how do you negotiate with difficult people in difficult situations. But over the years, over the decades of working with, from family feuds to labor strikes to boardroom battles to, wars, what's really dawned on me is that the single biggest obstacle to us being successful in getting to yes, getting what we really want, is not what we usually think it is. It's not just that difficult person on the other side. It's not just the difficult teenager. However difficult they could be, the greatest obstacle to us getting what we want is right here. It's ourselves. It's our own human tendency to react. In other words, act without thinking. It's to get in our own way. As the old saying goes, when angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. And so what I've realized is that actually there's a prerequisite to actually getting to yes with others, which is to get to yes with yourself. And it's to come from an inner yes, a yes to life, a yes to yourself. And that's the key, and that's really what I'm working on right now, as I realize there's a prerequisite course to getting to yes, which is getting to yes with yourself.
Boy, what a something to really write down. When angry, you'll give the best speech that you will ever regret. And, of course, that's so true, isn't it? It just comes back to this aspect of when we're closed down and triggered, the oneness is not, we're not connected. We're basically in a state of disconnection. And more than that, we're just emotionally triggered. So we're just off in a place of almost, I'll call it insanity. And that's not the time that we want to give a speech to somebody, is it?
That's absolutely right. It's very natural, very understandable to react. And this is why the foundation to me of successful negotiation is the ability to, I call it, to go to the balcony. And it's almost as if you imagine that you're talking with that person, you're negotiating with them on a stage. And part of you, your mind goes to a mental and emotional, maybe even a spiritual balcony, a place of calm, of perspective, of self-control, self-mastery, where you can really keep your eyes and ask yourself, what's most important here? What's most important in this argument, with my teenager? Is it, is it the laundry, or is it, the long-term relationship? You can really focus on what's most important, so that you can then try to achieve what is really important to you. So the key is that we don't have a hope of a chance of being able to influence the other side before we're able to influence ourselves. And that's the key to going to the balcony. It's to take a moment, just stop for a second, count to 10, take a few deep breaths, take a break, whatever going to the balcony, whatever your favorite technique is. But stop for a moment and focus on what you really want before you get into that chain of action and reaction and back and forth that goes nowhere.
Yeah, boy, that strikes me too. We're, of course, talking about negotiation, but we could substitute the word life for negotiation and just say where we're in any situation interacting with our partner, our daughter, coworker, our neighbor, whatever, just exactly what you said. What is most important here? And you use the example of laundry or our long-term relationship. But we've got these different circumstances that could be that would be the laundry, some short-term issue that maybe we're concerned about, or our long-term relationship. And really, that strikes me as oneness, where we're coming from that place of real deep consideration, and not just so tactically, in our head with this checklist of, you used the situation of our daughter, hey, your room wasn't cleaned up today, you didn't pull your blinds up, the lights were on, get upstairs and get on it. Well, that's one way to have an interaction with your daughter in the morning.
Well, that's it. From the balcony, one of the great powers in negotiation, and you're absolutely right. When I use the word negotiation, it's just it's life. Life is negotiation. Negotiation is life. We're talking about. So it's not just some rare activity you do. It's something that we're engaged in all the time in interacting with others. The two most basic words in the language are yes and no. Those are the basic words of negotiation. And one of the great powers we have in trying to get to yes with others is the ability to reframe, to see the picture in a different way. And when you're talking about oneness, Steve, it reminds me, we have this choice about, we could either see the picture, there's kind of a small picture of life where we're these kind of individual, separate little units in a hostile universe, at odds with each other, struggling for our survival. And you're going to get one kind of behavior out of that small picture of life. It's going to be very much win-lose, and you're going to try to win, and you're going to get into a fight, and so on. Or we can choose to reframe and see the larger picture of life, which is actually a truer picture, both scientifically and spiritually, of interconnectedness, of seeing that in fact we're not just separate, we're not just this little isolated little body separate from the rest, but we're part of this larger whole. And if we can see it from that larger picture, then we can deal with people, with respect and find ways to reach agreement that work for all sides, to reach win-win agreements, as it were.
Boy, and shortly we're going to segue over to this Abraham Path initiative that I was talking about earlier that Bill founded, which really is a beautiful story of how this initiative came to being, what it is, and how it's really all about oneness. But before we go there, I wanted to mention this synchronicity, Bill, that I've mentioned to you. It's just huge. I, of course, was an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley in the 90s. I was kind of in the right place at the right time, and I started a digital communications company, and with a partner, we grew it over 10 years, and it just grew like crazy. We sold it to NEC, the Japanese company, in 1999. But in the early years, we had these huge challenges because my partner and I did start it with our own money, and we were just in our early 30s, which is to say we didn't have any money. So it was quite challenging growing this company that was growing so rapidly just on our own bank accounts, basically. And there was a point in time there in those first several years where my partner wanted to sell and have me just take the company and grow it because the challenges were so severe, which is not unusual, especially when you're going to grow a company together and not bring in venture capital. But it got so challenging that I looked through bookstores for a resource and found this book called Getting to Yes, which is this big bestseller that Bill wrote. And I told him when we met here in Boulder and talked about the things he was doing, the things Humanities team was doing, that his book, I think, in some ways maybe saved my relationship with my partner at that time because it was so challenging, and we ended up not selling. He ended up not selling to me, and we ended up together growing the company for about 10 years. And we grew it quite large, and the sale was quite large. So it ended up working out well for my partner. But this tool, this book called Getting to Yes, was a huge resource for me, and I'm very grateful that you wrote that book, Bill.
Well, that's really profoundly satisfying because, writing a book takes a lot of time, and you're always hoping that it's going to actually help someone out there. So those kinds of stories touch an author's heart.
Well, it's terrific. Getting to Yes is this book. If anybody is interested in negotiation, and it's about oneness. It's about seeing that the other person is a part of ourself. Just like Bill said, negotiation is about really coming from the place of your, this other part of yourself that has these other interests, and really understanding them, and then coming to some kind of win-win that's based on what their interest is and your interest, and it's an interconnected world. So it's not a separate body over there. It's a part of ourself that we're negotiating with. Well, let's go ahead and segue over to the Abraham Path Initiative. This is such a cool initiative, Bill, and you've told me so much about it. Bill, if those of you that were here earlier know, he actually just got back from the Middle East several days ago. We walked through 3 countries over in the Middle East. But can we start with just a little bit about what the Abraham Path Initiative is? Who's Abraham, and what's this thing about, Bill?
Well, this all came about as post 9/11 and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I was just sensing this, this wave of fear and separation in humanity, really, between the West and the East. And so I was having dinner outside here one summer here in Boulder with some friends of mine who'd just gotten back from the Middle East, leading a kind of a pilgrimage to Syria, and we were talking about what could be done, if anything. And anyway, the idea emerged for me of, well, what about reenacting the ancient journey that Abraham and his family took 4,000 years ago, which is a story that gave birth to, many great traditions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I mean, it's kind of the origin story. As an anthropologist, working in the Middle East, one of the things is so much of those conflicts, and so many of the conflicts in the world are really about story. They're about identity. They're about who we are. And what the story of Abraham reminds us is that no matter what may divide us as human beings, what unites us is far, far greater. And the essential message of Abraham, his essential insight, is what we today would call oneness. Basically, he saw that, the whole universe was interconnected, that there was only one divinity. That's what gave birth to what's called monotheism today. But his basic insight is that there's only one, and therefore the way we need to treat others is with hospitality and open hearts. And so he's known for, he wandered basically. He left Mesopotamia, his home then. He followed the kind of the inner call from the divine, and which said, Lech Lecha, go find yourself. And so he left with his family, and he went on a great journey to, what we now call the Promised Land. But actually, the message was, go find yourself. So in some sense, the Promised Land is inside you. Of course, it's that inner experience. And so I thought, in today's world, how do we bring people together? Maybe the story can bring people together, and what better way to revive the story than to enable people to walk in the footsteps of Abraham and actually make the same kind of journey he did, to walk and meet people, meet people, very simple people, and come into connection and dissolve the fear and the separation that afflicts humanity. So that was the origin of the Abraham Path. And of course, a lot of people said, that's the craziest idea. No one's going to go walk in the Middle East. Are you crazy? And so we studied the idea for a few years and looked at, the impact of long-distance walking paths like the celebrated Santiago de Compostela path in Europe or the Appalachian Trail in the United States, and saw all the benefits that they can bring in terms of ecotourism and economic benefits, social benefits, all kinds of benefits for people, and we decided to test it out. And that was 10 years ago, that vision, and we studied it for a few years at Harvard, and we tested it out. And I'm pleased to say I've just come back from walking parts of the path in 3 countries, in Palestine, in the West Bank, in Israel, and in Jordan. And the path is thanks to our host committees in the region and so on, the path is alive in 4 countries, going on 5, and there's about 300 miles of path that's mapped out. You can go to our website, which is called www.abrahampath.org, and it's alive and well. And the spirit of Abraham is alive in the villagers, because you might go there expecting hostility, but what you receive instead is the most amazing hospitality, as my colleagues and I found when we were walking and staying in people's homes just now in the Middle East.
Awesome. We're going to talk more about this. A quick item for listeners. You can go to the livinginone.com site, livinginone.com, and then at the bottom, on the third over, you'll see the program and replay page. Click on that, and then over on the right margin, you'll see the dates, May 8, William Ury. Click on that, and then if you have inspirations or comments you'd like to share, go ahead and put them in the window there, and we might even see if we can get to 1 or 2 here during the hour. This story about Abraham, I want to just come back to it. You've educated me, Bill, in Abraham, and of course, I'd heard of Abraham, the Abraham of the Bible. As you mentioned, 3 religions came out of this Abraham: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So if people will recall, this is the Abraham that was the father, the physical father of these prophets that went on to start these 3 major monotheistic religions, Abraham. And I didn't know much about him, and I still know very little, but you've educated me some and shared that Abraham really was about oneness, and even said, we are all one in his own words. Can you tell us a little bit more about him, Bill?
Sure. Well, we know a little bit about him from the scriptures, from the Bible, from the Quran, but we know a lot about him from kind of cultural memory, oral history, little things that I find along the path of. But the one thing that everyone agrees upon is that he's associated with the spirit of hospitality and kindness, loving kindness towards others. He believed in receiving strangers into his tent. There's a story I'll just tell you, one of the many stories, but that I heard in Turkey from an imam a few years ago about Abraham sitting in his tent, and an old man comes by, and he's around 70, looking for a meal, and Abraham welcomes him into the tent. But then, I don't know, for some reason he asks him, do you believe in the one God? And as it turns out, the man maybe is a fire worshiper or something, and he doesn't quite share Abraham's beliefs. So he doesn't quite feel entirely welcome, so he kind of leaves the tent, and Abraham's sitting there in the tent, and he hears the voice of God saying to him, Abraham, I've known about that fellow's religious beliefs for 70 years, and I've been giving him 3 meals a day. You can't give him 1? So Abraham feels embarrassed, of course, runs out after the man, brings him into the tent, shows him royal hospitality for an entire week, and as he's ushering his guests out at the end of the week, he thinks to tell him about this conversation that he had with God. And the man listens and says, you know what, Abraham? That kind of God I could believe in. In other words, there are so many stories like that, or just this last week, I was walking in the middle of the West Bank there talking to a fellow who's saying that he remembered his grandfather used to cut wheat in the fields, and as you cut, he would cut the wheat, and he would cut the wheat maybe like 7 times on one side, and then he would take some of the wheat every 7th and put it, to his right side rather than his left side, and say, this is for Father Abraham. This is for Father Abraham. And what it was he was saving some of the wheat for the poor. And so Abraham is known for that. There's another fellow that I met in Jordan who had been born in Hebron, which is the city where Abraham is buried, which is known as the city of the friend, because that's how Abraham is known in that region. He's known as the friend, the beloved friend of God. And outside of Abraham's tomb, he said he remembered as a boy, every single day he would go there with his family and they would drink the soup, which is called the soup of Abraham, which is given for free, a lentil soup. And it was amazing to hear that story, because I'd also been looking into ancient pilgrims' accounts from 1,000 years ago. And 1,000 years ago, I found a pilgrim's account talking about that same soup being offered in the name of Abraham to the travelers, to the poor, to anyone who wanted to have that soup. So he really he connotes generosity and hospitality. And so it's what people are most proud of there. And it changes our perceptions of the Middle East, because the media gives us one perception, but when you go there, you find something entirely different. And so the path really is a way of step by step. That's our motto, bringing people together from around the world.
Gosh, isn't it interesting that Abraham, as you were, some of the descriptions you used, loving, compassionate, forgiving, generosity, hospitality, and yet, as you mentioned, often the media and mainstream society, God is framed as, judging. At the end of our life, there's a judgment, angry, violent. These are all things, unfortunately, that are sometimes shared about God. And, of course, this is part of why Humanities Team was founded. We're called the Civil Rights Movement for the Soul, because our whole focus is that God is exactly what you're sharing Abraham was known to be, and that the three monotheistic religions grew out of: loving, compassion, forgiving, generosity, hospitality. And when we talk about going within, coming fully alive as part of the divine, it's going within and connecting with that energy, which is the divine energy, the God energy. That's what this whole summit is about: is going in and connecting with that energy and just being bathing in that energy and having it spill over on all parts of our life. So neat to hear that Abraham, in some ways, was an emblem, a model of that.
That's it, and that's basically just known for that. It's that spirit that's still alive today. People will invite you into their homes and say, in the name of Father Abraham, please have a meal. So it's that spirit of hospitality and friendship that's so desperately needed in the world today, because, in a globalized world, there's so many strangers, and this that you can learn from, simple villagers who they insist you can't pass their home without them having to offer you something, because you're a stranger. You may be a messenger from God, as it were. In fact, there's a story. The sages of old were, reading the Old Testament there, and it's interesting because when there are three men who show up to Abraham and his wife Sarah to tell him that he has a child when he's in his tent, and he washes their feet and treats them with lavish hospitality. And then in the next chapter of the Bible, those three show up for Abraham's nephew Lot as angels. And they were saying, how come they show up as men for Abraham but as angels for his nephew Lot? And after debating it, they came to an answer, and the answer was, for Abraham, they didn't need to show up as angels because he could look into the heart of any human being and see the divine within.
Yeah, gosh, isn't that beautiful? And, of course, wouldn't that be true of somebody that clearly was here on a spiritual journey? Abraham is so huge in the evolution of spirituality on the earth, and that he could do, as you say, see into people, and really probably even was a healer in some ways.
It is, and the idea of the path really is to honor the past, honor our roots, because over half of humanity has its roots in the cradle of civilization in the Holy Land there. It's to serve the present, because as people walk the path, you give respect, you receive respect, to people who feel sometimes disrespected by the world, and there's economic livelihood, dignity, because it's all about dignity, and it's to really envision and build, a better future for all of us, step by step, by walking this ancient path. So I invite any of you who are listening right now, if you if you'd like to come walk with us, we warmly invite you. As you walk, you build the path.
As you walk, you build the path, and just amazing that you walked through, I think you were telling me, the Palestinian West Bank, Galilee, and northern Jordan, which
right.
That's a lot of ground, isn't it?
That's it, exactly. The northern part of the West Bank, through beautiful, beautiful ancient cities, Roman ruins, glorious hills with olive trees, and just see, this was the birth canal of humanity, really, is because humanity came out of Africa up the Rift Valley, and that's where it is, and there are all these birds, millions of birds flowing up. This is kind of the connecting point of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and it's the place, where our languages, our cultures, where agriculture, where, our religions come from, so you can kind of understand yourself by understanding your roots. It's a journey of self-discovery, and at the same time, it's a journey of discovery of the other, and to realize that the other is your brother, is your sister, and it's a chance to reconnect the human family step by step.
Absolutely. We're going to, in a little bit, I'm going to ask you questions just about oneness in your own life and your family, Bill, but there's so much more here in the Abraham Path Initiative I want to get to. Bill's very modest and hasn't shared. The Abraham Path Initiative has been featured in some major magazines and newspapers worldwide, has it not? I've seen it myself.
In fact, just this month it was named by National Geographic Traveler magazine as the world's best #1 new walking trail in the world. So it's an amazing honor because there are obviously a lot of beautiful walking paths in the world, but they named it #1 because it's unique. There's nothing like it in the world. This kind of chance to so rich. It's like there are all these places that it connects, whether it's Jerusalem or Bethlehem or Urfa, all these amazing, Hebron, all these amazing places that it connects, so it has last year, I think on ABC, Christiane Amanpour did a whole 10-minute section on it on the path, walking the path in Turkey and the West Bank and Israel.
Isn't it perfect that as this world is going through this evolution, the spiritual evolution now, which we can all feel, that this path, the Abraham Path Initiative, which is about awakening to oneness, is being featured as a top destination for people on vacation or during travel. So what a synchronicity is that, huh?
That's right. People, I think now when they travel, they're more and more looking for meaning, something that can really, that they can share with each other, share with their families, that can give their lives meaning, and they're looking for slower travel, and that's what walking does. The amazing thing about walking is when you walk on the land, you're walking side by side with people with a common direction, and it really gives you a deep, deep sense of connection. It's a walking that way is a way of living in oneness.
Bill, one of our listeners, Alice in the state of Washington, has asked, is it safe for travelers, and how do we go about scheduling a trip?
Sure. The way to do it is you go to the website, abrahampath.org, and it will give you all the information you need depending on where you want to go and so on. And the question of safety is, there's a discussion of that on the site too, it is, at least my experience, I can say I've walked it many, many times, a dozen or 2 dozen times, and with many different kinds of groups, young and old, American, European, people from Asia, Buddhists, Buddhist nuns. Because the path goes way beyond it's a cultural phenomenon, and and everyone has found it very safe. Remarkably safe, because you hear that it's not safe, when you read the news, but it's remarkably safe, and statistically it's much safer than walking in any major city. that you could imagine. So it's and so if you do it well and right, and there are ways on the website to do it, you can go with guides and so on. Obviously the world is unpredictable, and nothing is absolutely safe. But comparatively to almost any other experience, it's especially compared to what we have in our mind. We've never had an incident.
And Sally from Colorado asks, is it for all ages and physical abilities?
Absolutely, and you can make it. Yeah, absolutely. We've had people walk it in their 80s and 90s, and little infants and little babies or little toddlers. Because you can walk it for a few hours, you can walk it for a few days, you can walk it for a week or more, a couple of weeks. So it's something that you can design to your own needs and abilities. And I also say that, it's in the infancy. It's like of building this path. We're in the first few years. So everyone who goes is a pioneer. You're a trailblazer, and it may bring you a little bit sometimes out of your comfort zone, but that's the whole idea of travel. But you can design it really to your taste. So. But go there always. If you go there with an open heart, expecting, just being open, it's remarkable the transformations that people report. You will not just both the inner experiences they have, as well as the experiences with others. So yes, you can. It's for everyone, really. It's designed for everyone because that's the whole nature of that story of Abraham, and the story of the path is inclusive.
Yeah, boy, and a vacation with meaning and purpose, and like you say, that's what people are looking for these days. So sounds like an ideal consideration here as we're in early May and people are thinking about this summer or next summer, a walk along the Abraham path. And go to Abraham.
And even like the springtime is like where I was just now. That's when the flowers are coming out, or in the fall. Those are great times to walk because sometimes you have to be mindful of the weather. The biggest danger is, as our local guides like to say, is not bringing enough water. That's the biggest danger.
Right. And Dame in London just says, "Wow, it sounds like a trek to enlightenment, a spiritual journey that's a trek to enlightenment." So that sounds pretty inviting. Thanks for sharing that, Dame in London. It sounds to me like that too. And these days, as we're looking for vacations that are more than just laying out in the sun, this sounds pretty appealing. And who better to talk to than Bill, who started the initiative and who's just a few days back from his journey over there. Bill, I'm going to segue here shortly into just a discussion of oneness in your own life, because I know it's something very important to you, and it's even an energy in your household. But before we go to that, I wanted to just go. You mentioned earlier in the program that you have a PhD in anthropology, and that the Abraham Path Initiative is about this one human family. You had stated to me a while back that there are related psychological and spiritual truth in this. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know you have already, but just kind of bring in some these aspects of psychological and spiritual truths here.
Yeah, to me, the founding sort of scientific truth of anthropology is, there's not two human families, there's only one. There's really, and differences are really only skin deep, if that. And so, that unity is key, and of course that's the profound spiritual truth in all traditions, that we're all one. And psychologically, sometimes, right now, it's a little bit hard sometimes for people to kind of really understand that unity, which is why, a project like the Abraham Path exists. It's to help give people a tangible experience of what is intangible. As you said to me long ago on our walk, Steve, it's to make the intangible tangible. So to me, that's the great challenge. And for some reason right now you're making me remember an old quote that I've always liked, a poem to me that's the key to the path and the key to getting to yes from an American poet who lived in the 30s. His name was Edwin Markham, and he said, you know, he was talking about the experience of exclusion, which is really, you know, at the heart of every conflict. You know, behind every conflict is this feeling of being excluded. So it goes, they drew a circle and shut me out, a rebel, a heretic, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle, a much bigger circle, and took them in. And to me, that's the key here. That's the key. So much in the world right now, you know, we're excluding parts of the human family, going back to your question, Steve, and we feel excluded. And there's so much of that going on in the world today. And what's the remedy for exclusion? It's inclusion. It's when people draw a circle excluding you, you draw a wider circle by harnessing, you know, the power of oneness, the power of love.
Oh, I love that. We drew a circle that drew them in, and inclusion is the answer, where exclusion is so often the focus. And reminds me of the Albert Einstein quote, which I don't have right here in front of me, but, you know, where he talks about we're just stuck in this delusion, you know, that kept caring for those closest to us, our family, and our task, he says, must be to break through that and to reach out and to, you know, basically connect with and love all of the world around us.
That's it. Expand that circle of compassion. That's the great task. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's extremely difficult, and this is why, you know, I've devoted my life to kind of practical methods to help in that process. But that is the challenge facing humanity, and as he recognized, you know, being keenly aware of you know, the atomic bomb, physics, and that, you know, the long-term survival of humanity and of all life on Earth really depends on us.
See, Bill, I think I lost your audio here. So we lost Bill's audio connection. He'll be right back. We've got Nanette Kennedy and Dee Meyer here. Dee Meyer is one of the co-hosts that's with me, Nanette Kennedy in the background, and I want to thank them. They help set up these calls and the whole summit, and they'll help us get connected again with Bill. Linda in Virginia says, thank you to all, and thanks, Linda, for sharing that. And there are many other comments that have come in from people who have shared that they are just really appreciating all the wisdom that Bill Urey is sharing with us today, a man of so many gifts and talents. He founded the negotiation project, co-founded the negotiation project at Harvard University. He created this Abraham Path initiative, and he's an author of so many books on negotiation and on life. And hopefully we're going to get him back. He is actually a model for living in oneness. There are some people that we meet in life who just have this smile that won't go away. If you live around Boulder and have met Bill Urey, you know what I mean. He's somebody who just lives in this energy of oneness and compassion and love. He's that kind of person. Don Miguel Ruiz is another person who is like that. Don Miguel and his son, Don Jose Ruiz, are going to be on with us tomorrow morning from 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific time.
Steve.
Bill, you're back.
I'm sorry, I lost you. My landline ran out of battery for some reason.
Oh, no worries. Well, I was just sharing that we're going to segue over to you, Bill Urey, and the person, your practices for living in oneness and kind of how that works in your home. I don't know if you caught what I was sharing, but, and I'm not sure you would say this about yourself. Again, I see you as a very modest person, but you always have such an infectious, contagious smile on your face, and just the energy of oneness. Your staff has it too. I'm sure they get it from you. So I'd love to. Also, I see that there are events that you schedule into, including in Brazil. I know you're leaving for the airport, you said today, to head down into South America. And I've seen you promoted for oneness events where lots of people come together. So I'd like to just go to that more personal level of, what is your own process, Bill, for connecting with the divine and coming fully alive as part of the divine, because I see that you do that.
Well, it's a lifelong study for me, and it began, Steve, with for me, my great teacher was nature. Really, spending time in nature, where nature, going for walks and hikes. It's like, for me, nature is my first kind of like cathedral or mosque or synagogue or temple. It's always the beauty, and it brings me back and connects me to who I am and reminds me that I'm part of this larger universe. It brings me into connection, and so one of my daily practices is to go for a hike in the mountains, which is why I live here in Boulder every day, to just to drink that in, that connectedness, which is that experience of oneness, and then just in family, I've been blessed with a wife and children who are very loving, and so there's a lot of love and laughter in the household. And even though, as I mentioned just before the call, we've had our challenges with my younger daughter having had 14 surgeries, we've really learned deeply from that, and it's been a great teacher for us, and so it's a constant daily practice of learning to appreciate every single day and the blessings that life offers.
Gosh, yesterday we had Jennifer McLean with us, Barbara Marks Hubbard, and Patricia Ellsberg, Barbara's sister, and this theme came up repeatedly of just these incredible hardships that they'd experienced in their life and challenges. Barbara Marks Hubbard's mother died when she was young. Jennifer McLean sharing of many challenges today that are confronting her, and just how these challenges were turned around and made into something good, that there was all of this growth and maturity, and I don't know that they used this word, but I got it from what they said, evolution, as a spiritual being. From these challenges, it was turned around and made into a positive. Lemon that was made into a lemonade. And at the beginning of the program, you were sharing, I didn't know that your daughter had been through 14 surgeries. So your daughter, I think you said, is 16, and yet you also mentioned she was just last month on national television, the Today Show or something, and was given a Guinness World Record. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it does. Gabby is her name, and she's been an incredible teacher to me. And she was born with a rare congenital syndrome called Vater syndrome, and which affected her spine and her legs and many organs and so on. So we weren't even sure she was going to live, but certainly to walk. And so it was a really a very challenging situation for my wife and me and her two older brothers, is just to go through. And we now look back on that as a kind of blessed shock, because it kind of woke us up in some sense and compelled us to do this kind of inner work, to look for our inner resources and to do that. But the amazing story is that in January, Gabby announced that for her 16th birthday, she'd always wanted to break a Guinness. She always wanted to be in the Guinness Book of World Records. It was a fantasy of hers as a child. She tried the longest hopscotch course, or most socks on one foot. But somehow she was doing volleyball tryouts, and she doesn't let anything stop her. Really, she's with all her physical challenges, she really just goes out for everything. So she's going out for volleyball, and she couldn't run the mile, so the coach said, well, why don't you plank? And so, which is this abdominal plank position where you drop on your elbows on the floor and you keep your body absolutely rigid. And most of us can hold it for a minute or two before we start to shake. And anyway, when the other kids were coming back in from their mile run, the teacher said, Gabby, it's been 10 minutes. Are you still in that plank position? And Gabby said yes. And so the light bulb went on. She said, Guinness Book of World Records. And so that was last October. In November, she had a surgery. But in January, she said, look, for my 16th birthday, this is what I want to do. I want to break the world record, and I want to use it to raise money for Children's Hospital to really, because they helped her, she wanted to help other kids. So she set as her initial target, raising $5,000 for Children's Hospital, and she wanted to get the word out. And the world record is like 40 minutes, so it was a lot. But she started training, and she was doing pretty well. And then like a week before, the current record holder heard about her and wrote a beautiful note. I mean, just really loving note saying, "I heard that you're trying to beat my record. I just want to let you know that last week I broke my own record, and it went up from 40 minutes to an hour and 5 minutes. So you're going to have to do that." And Gabi, just with her indomitable spirit, just sort of took that right in stride. And so then on her 2 days after her 16th birthday here in Boulder, which was only 3 weeks ago, she went for an hour and 20 minutes, which was twice the existing world record. And last week, a week ago, she was on Good Morning America, and the Guinness Book of World Records official showed up and certified that she could hold the abdominal plank longer than any other woman on earth.
So awesome, and that she turned that into a fundraising activity for Children's Hospital. Wow,
Right, and now she's up to over $55,000. So for Children's Hospital, her original record was $5,000. So to me, it was an amazing story of grit and determination and love, and she was surrounded by the community who were cheering her on as she was doing it, and she just has that inner spirit that's indomitable, that despite all of her challenges, she was going to break a world record. As one person put it, an abdominally challenged teenager takes on the world's greatest abdominal challenge. And she did it. I mean, any of you out there, if you've ever done the plank, I mean, you could try it. It's, I can't do more than 2 minutes before giving up. And on ABC Good Morning America, the host tried to do it as they were interviewing her. They gave up after about a minute.
I love that. What a great quote. Abominably challenged
if you're
teenager.
interested in learning more about it, you can. Her website is it's called Gabi GABI.com, and she's got her little videos and stuff. It's been an amazing lesson. I'm just really in awe and really speechless at watching her, rise to the challenge and turn, as you say, perceived weaknesses into strengths, and really test your limits. She's certainly been an inspiration for lots of people around the planet who've heard about her now through the internet.
Yeah, it seems this is the journey into oneness. Bill, we've got about 5 minutes left because I've got a few things I want to share at the end with everybody. There's another program after this. I want to get to a few other things too. But with 4 or 5 minutes, I want to just go back to your discussion of oneness in your own life because in today's world where we're just so overstimulated and there's so much just digital this and that everywhere. You talked about how you get out. In our case, we've got this beautiful outdoors, and you get out and hike, and you get connected with nature. You said you drink it in. Other things, just for our listeners, of course, this summit is about coming fully alive as part of the divine. So really coming into that oneness experience and being blessed by it, washed by it, and transformed by it. So just final things you want to share that you might recommend to our listeners for living in oneness in our own life, and also for creating this energy in our home, such as what you have with your wife and daughter.
Well, one thing I find is that the very first minutes after waking up, to me, are like time just to be still, whether it's to meditate, take a few minutes of silence. Just don't check your email first thing, but just really. I like to go to what I was saying to that spiritual balcony and just kind of just check in with myself and remember this connection with everything and remind myself of what my purpose is on this planet, which is to be an instrument for peace and to just, to me, one of the great tools too is gratitude. I used to think that that you were grateful because something good had happened to you, but I've learned that actually, if you're grateful something good happens to you, that actually gratitude comes before the good thing, not always just after the good thing. Because I find that if I can count my blessings and just, it's a great lesson I've learned from my wife, Lizanne, is that if I can just remember all the things in life that I feel grateful for, it just, a flow, it brings me into the flow of abundance that helps me in my daily life and helps me deal with any challenges that arise.
Beautiful. I love what you share, Bill. And how about just with your, are there any things with your wife or your daughter, insofar as this oneness experience, any things come to mind, experiences with either of them or both of them?
Never underestimate the importance of laughter and a sense of humor, because even in the most challenging moments, my wife has an incredible sense of humor, and Gabby does too, and just to kind of make light and realize that that as serious as life is, you can't take it too seriously. That sort of sense of joie de vivre, of kind of introducing laughter every single day, to me, is one of the great spiritual bounds of life that is not to be underestimated.
I love it. Well, you saved the best for last. I have made notes here. I like that you started with don't check email and then went into the things that you do, the meditation and silence and spiritual balcony and check-in and reminding yourself of your purpose, and then these other things, gratitude, which is something that, how do we get to happiness from happiness? So just gratitude in advance, and then the power of laughter, of humor. I love it. And I do, once again, I see in you, Bill, somebody who is a walking model for these things. You really always have that contagious energy of oneness in your expression. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us. You have shared just so much wisdom and so much heart energy, and you've just been amazing. So I want to thank you so much. Before I get to other thank yous, just a few things here. Once again, you can go to the livinginone.com site, and then down at the bottom, you'll see the program replay page. It's the third one over, and over on the right margin, you'll see May 8th, William Ury. Go ahead and leave your comments and inspirations there. As well, we do offer the 48-hour free replay for this, so know that that's available. And for people that want to, that haven't been taking notes and maybe have missed some sessions or want to share sessions with friends and family, we do offer this $100 off discount during the summit. You'll see down at the bottom of that registration page, the second one over is upgrade, and you can click on that, see how the upgrade works and all the different options that are available on that discount that's available during the summit. Next, I want to share there's a session coming up here in about 30 minutes. It's with Dr. Deborah Rosman. She's the president and co-CEO of HeartMath. And HeartMath, of course, has so much wisdom that it brings to this discussion of oneness. And I'll have three co-hosts with me during that program, Barbara Marks Hubbard, also Barbara Fields, and Anna Marie Patiers, who's in Humanities team. So there are going to be five of us that are part of that program, and you won't want to miss it. It starts at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And I want to just close with, again, thanks to Bill Ury for being here with us. So much knowledge, so much wisdom, and just so much heart, too, Bill. Thank you. And I want to thank my colleagues, Dee Meyer, who's one of the co-hosts of the Living in Oneness Summit, who's here with me, Nanette Kennedy, and my other colleagues in Humanities team. And last, and definitely not least, I want to thank all of you, the listeners, who have prioritized time for this discussion of living in oneness and coming fully alive as part of the divine. Thank you for being here, and we will see you all in about 30 minutes.